All
All
right,
right.
here we
Hello,
go.
everybody. Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing all right today. Happy Tuesday, July 2nd. We are going to go begin our second review session for the Themed Attraction Student Showcase. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Chris Rogers. I am a professor with Purdue University in themed entertainment and attraction design. And I recognize some familiar faces, and some of those faces are our panelists for today. So the way today is going to go, it's going to be pretty straightforward. We're going to introduce the panelists very quickly. We are then going to be moving to each of the projects. We're not going to have time to review what those projects are. I will ask you if your project is represented. So do we have any students here for a particular project? Just so that we can direct commentary towards that individual or individuals. And then there will be 9 minutes of commentary for each of the projects from the panelists. This is being recorded, and so if no student is present, there is a recording that will be available for later review. Also, I am going to be strict on time. I don't mean to be mean, but I will cut off the panelists, even though I like them, because we want to make sure that we stick to our time. So no offense to Michael, Dave, Heidi, or Michael. So why don't we start with the panelists just from the beginning. So let me start with Michael. Would you introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Michael Blau. I am president of Adirondack Studios. We are a design and fabrication firm for show sets around the world, offices in upstate New York, Florida, Pasadena, Dubai, Shanghai, and Singapore. My background actually comes from theater. I have an MFA in set design. Also have a business degree. So I look at things in a couple different ways. Also really glad to be here and offer input.
Thank you, Michael. Dave
Yeah,
Cooperstein.
yeah. Hi, I'm Dave Cooperstein. I'm an architect and creative designer at PGAV Destinations here in St. Louis, Missouri. I've been with PGAV for 25 years. I've worked on everything from really, really small exhibit projects to entire theme parks. Most recently, opening up SeaWorld Abu Dhabi, which I worked on for about 10 years. I also have a theater background. And I've done everything at PGAV from architectural design and concept and early blue sky, creative development to architectural design and development, graphic design, a little bit of landscape, with all kinds of things. So,
Thank you, Dave. Heidi.
My name is Heidi Hirsch. I am the Director of Project Development for Reveal Studio. We are an architectural firm in Glendale, California. And I've run the gamut, like a lot of these folks, from model building and some of the high quality sweatshops of LA. Did some Disney work for 5 years, went on to different other companies. I've evolved from a model builder to an interior designer to a project manager to a project director. I like to say that I'm more of a team casting person. I go from soup to nuts, start with a client and end up turning over the key. And I've been in the industry for about 35 years.
Thank you, Heidi. Michael Libby.
Hi there, everyone. I'm Michael Libby. I'm the CEO of a company called World Builder. I have a background in themed attraction design, primarily concept design and development, but also game engines. My company works with the Unity game engine, and we create digital twins for attractions that do pre-visualization and simulation and pre-integration for attractions using virtual reality and new technologies to help mitigate risk during design, development, and construction. Hi.
Thank you, Michael. I also want to acknowledge other people in the room. Jamie DeRuiter is with the Ringling School of Art and Design. He's a professor there. Jesse Cam is in Indianapolis, or I'm in Indianapolis, is in Orlando, and has been integral to the development of this competition. And then Nate Naberson, who is the owner and operator of themedattraction.com. And so with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started with our reviews. The first project up is the Orem Observatory. Is there any individuals here from the Orem Observatory? Okay. So with that said, the clock starts now. Panelists, if you would like to take your time and review your commentary on this project.
I'm okay to jump in. My notes on this one were, there's a lot of similar techniques in storytelling that are common in a lot of escape room producers today. And one of the things that I noticed in this seemed not as clear, but could be resolved, are the idea of repeatability or variation on the different outcomes of the project by guests. And once again, as I mentioned earlier, it's the business part of it as well as the art and fun part of it. And I think taking a look at this and understanding what the return on investment would be for this, and if it would be a good solid business plan. I think it's the start of some really good ideas, but I believe that it needed to be further developed to make it viable.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when I was going through the concept, my biggest concern, my biggest issue with the concept is that the way it's written currently, it plays out in an entire linear fashion, right? And that's just not really how an escape room works. And the beauty of a really well-designed escape room is that you have a small group of people all playing together, all doing different tasks, and puzzles are different rooms, and they all somehow fit together magically, no matter what order that they're discovered. And that's just not the way this concept is described. I don't know if it can work or not. Maybe it can, but I think it would behoove the authors of this just to play a whole bunch of escape rooms and see how the puzzles are all connected and how the gameplay works and just work through that and apply that to this concept. I'll let someone else talk now.
I'd like to chime in on that, and I agree with what you're saying, Dave. It's well presented to a degree, and the aspects of it being linear, I agree with you. I would like, when we're looking at this right now and we're reading and reading and reading, I'm not getting the opportunity to go back and look at things and see where it flows and where it doesn't flow. The idea is great. I just feel like the presentation is weak, and that may not make a lot of sense right now because there's so much to look at. There we go. There's my ground plan. Now I need to have a little more flow, and I would change it up a bit. But it's worth looking into. And again, the ROI on any escape room right now is questionable.
Yeah, I will echo what everybody else has said and follow up in a little more detail on Dave's point about the linear gameplay. Yes, I thought there were some great ideas in here, a lot of creativity, and sort of a compelling central conceit. But I do agree that it did seem to read like a linear narrative. And I think that the best thing that you could do, like Dave said, would be to first of all play a bunch of escape rooms, but also dive a little deeper into some game design theory. There's some great books out there. One is The Art of Game Design by Jesse Schell. Another one is Game Design Workshop by Tracy Fullerton. Doing some reading on books like that will really help you understand how to deal with things like players who are lost and don't understand what to do next, how to make that a little bit more obvious, how to keep all of the different players engaged at the same time, and how to create a non-linear interactive storytelling. So I think with a little bit more research into game design, formal game design practices, this could turn into a great concept.
I'll just follow up with one last thing if we have time. If you cut me off, fine. But I'm really glad to see that you took a pass at the layout of the space and sort of fundamentally, how it works architecturally. But it just sort of needs a lot of work in terms of sizing and scale of spaces and the fundamental flow of the guest experience. And maybe that just comes from sort of a lack of experience with architectural design, or I'm not sure why, but there's just an understanding of the guest experience and how much space you actually need to do stuff that I think you can dive even deeper into. Like, there's no reason the main lobby needs to be as big or even bigger than the actual escape room itself. So there's just some, again, as this thing develops and as you would dive deeper into it, you would start to understand the guest experience from that sort of detailed point of view.
All right. Any other commentary for the Orem Observatory? All right, you bought me three more minutes of time back.
Dang it.
Viking, I know that's not a challenge, panelists. It's like, oh, I just got to talk longer. The next project we're going to be moving into is the Viking Voyage. Is there any students here from the Viking Voyage?
Christian, I'll jump in and speak for Juan. He is one of my students and he's currently at an internship, and he said he's in a pitch session currently. So he's doing the work, but he could not be here today. So I'm going to take notes for him. And of course, this is recorded.
Great. Thank you, Jamie. All right. I'm going to go ahead and start the clock. And panelists, if you would like to review the Viking Voyage.
I'm happy to jump in again, and then maybe the next one, someone can go first after that.
Sure.
But I'll get it rolling. I thought the design of this is quite lovely, and very specific to the location, to the venue, all of that. Beautiful design work. Tells the story with regard to the kiosk, and as it goes forward. But as I got a little bit deeper into it, I'm trying to understand what the content of information that would be presented by the kiosk. Also, just questioning the idea or the concept of choosing a figurehead which personalizes your voyage. I think it's a good attempt to try and get an emotional connection from the guests to the experience. I think it's about what is the true engagement that will happen in the experience. So I think for me, it looks like there was a lot of really tremendous effort on how to introduce the idea of this in the kiosk design, but then getting a better understanding of the experience after the fact would have helped me to fill out more of the package.
Yeah, I agree with all those things. I think there's some really great storytelling here. I'm not sure how much of the story is actually part of the project. Like it's hard to judge the storyboards without more context or details, and the focus seemed to be on the kiosk. So that's what I based my evaluation on, was the actual design of the kiosk. I wish there was more emphasis on the Viking Voyage concept, because I think that has the potential to be something really unique and really special in terms of the overall story. But if we're just looking at the kiosk, I think the design intent package that we're looking at, it is about as close to an industry standard design intent package that I've seen from a student project, particularly a first or second year student. There are probably more notes and dimensions needed on the drawings, but the bones of the package is really solid. And there's the technology integration. It's a great start. I think it requires another level of detailing to really understand how it can work. But I think there's some great thinking here, especially when you get down to sort of a detailed level.
I'm going to jump in and talk about exactly what you guys are saying. The other thing is that when I start to look at a presentation, I really want to understand it right away. And with this one, I struggled a little bit to understand what I was looking at. And again, the detail work is beautiful. The effort that's put into it's amazing. But at this point, I'm with not knowing exactly what my experience is, I run into a problem with that. And in this particular case, I wasn't too sure. I understand it's a kiosk and beautifully done. I agree with everyone. I just would like to see a more direct way in which I can understand it as it moves forward.
Yes, I would agree with that. I think this gets into a discussion or maybe learning opportunity about what is a deliverable versus what is a pitch or presentation, and how do you really successfully convey and get people excited about a concept. All of the work that's been done here is amazing. I do agree. There's purely from a pitch standpoint, there's way too much focus on the kiosk as opposed to the actual experience itself, which is really just covered by a few storyboards. I'd love to know more about what happens on the actual voyage. The idea about choosing a totem is cool. But there's not really much about how that pays off. How does that actually impact the voyage? How does that, the house that you're selected into, so to speak, how does that actually alter the content of the voyage itself? So it was really interesting to see throughout all of these projects, different students had different areas of specialization and talent. And that was really clear. And, this had beautiful renderings and a lot of thought and design documentation for the kiosk itself. But from a purely presentational standpoint, I want to be hooked right away, have less detail about the onboarding experience and more about the overall guest experience.
Yeah, and that's that's what's I think hard about, sort of evaluating these projects is that it's hard to know sort of what the team's background is, and what they focus on, and then evaluate someone who's focused on the technical versus someone who's focused on the big concept storytelling. It's really challenging. But yeah, I mean, I agree with Michael. Like, I actually think the Viking voyage experience is really cool. Like the concept for that is really cool, and I would have loved to see more, more development on that. But because it wasn't provided, I just evaluated it on what was provided on the technical package itself. So,
I want to reinforce that looking at the renderings, if you were to see this in a park or on a dock or anywhere else, this kiosk would be a place of destination. You would go to it and you'd say, what is that? How do I get engaged?
Yeah.
And that was really exciting for me.
Yeah.
And then, and I could see the talent of the designers who worked on it and the work that was done. I then felt like, oh, tell me more. What am I going to get?
Right.
So it's the start of really, really good, solid work. Yeah. It's then taking it further on. This would be someone I'd want to put on a team to be part of an entire team to then develop the experience.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think, there's a level of expertise that's demonstrated in the design intent package that reflects a lot of thought that's been put into, how the figurehead should be fabricated and all that stuff. And if you can bring that level of thinking to the rest of the project, it'd be a really cool project, really strong project.
Any last questions or comments? We have 1 minute left.
If I could speak for Juan.
All right, thank you, panelists.
Sorry, just real quick, and just jump in and speak for Juan and just offer up my appreciation for all that feedback. It's all spot on. Especially, I think it was Michael who was able to distinguish the difference between a set of deliverables and a full pitch. That is 100% on point at the second year level. That's what this student is doing, just practicing these different types of deliverables. More in the senior years where you might see this be fleshed out into a larger project with a full pitch. So all the comments are 100% accurate, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jamie. All right, we're going to move on to the next project. Do we have any students here from Wilderhaven? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go ahead and reset my clock, and panelists, you may begin.
Sure, I'm happy to start this time. I didn't have a lot to criticize about this project. I love this project so much. I think it's wildly creative. I think it's amazingly cohesive as an experience, the way it's described, and really one of the sort of most unique guest experiences that I've seen, certainly in a student project, potentially in just about any project I've seen. I was just really impressed with the level of clarity of the concept, how all the parts kind of fit together. There's like there's a playfulness to the concept that I think is really cool and really unique and that I just loved. You know, I think it's really smart to use completely made up animals to convey the notion of respect for the natural world. You know, at first I was kind of skeptical about the non-linear experience described in the designer's notes, but because most walkthrough experiences are successful because of their linear path, unlike an escape room. But it actually makes a lot of sense for this particular walkthrough experience in the story, the way it's described. It essentially functions like a museum or an aquarium, like the Georgia Aquarium works exactly this way, with a giant space in the middle, and then you go off to these individual experiences, you come back to the hub, it's the hub and spoke, right? So there's just so much about the project I loved, and especially the way that you imagined how to integrate technology into the experience. And I'll let Michael Libby speak more to that because I know he has specific thoughts. But I just love the approach to the accessibility and sort of the notion of a radically accessible experience. I think I'm going to steal that term somehow and use it on my projects. But I really like this project.
I'm going to go ahead and jump in here because mine is pretty short. In some cases, I'll look at a project and I'll ask the question, why? In this case, I would ask the question, when? This is a lovely, lovely project, well thought out, consistent. I have no problem following it. I love the whole idea of dealing with the animals and anything that we can do, of course, to drive home in our industry the importance of keeping our natural world alive, if you will, and our not so natural world. This is very good. I would love to work on it. I'd love to see it fleshed out. That's it.
I'm happy to jump in. One of the things, there's some good things that I saw in this, in the way that this was approached, and I'll give a couple of those. The idea of guests discover or having the designers or the designer discover how guests would go through this. So a lot of play testing, obviously, that would need to happen to allow for that out of the box. But what I did like was the basis of training that is mentioned, to say we're going to give the basics to guests to understand how they would interact primarily, but give them enough freedom to explore still. And then I did look at the emotional map too, which is really terrific. I kind of want to talk to the designer a little bit more and understand really what that emotional journey is. And I can understand the idea of you know, brave and connection restored and mystery and friendship. Certainly I get a sense of what Skippy means also. But really, what are the potential paths for many guests to follow through? And I would assume each restoration gives a different type of outcome, and to better understand that. I agree. This is something that could totally move forward, and could be developed. It would be fun to do so. It's a nice connection between the environment and fantasy and all those things. It's nice work.
I would just like to do a quick echo in on the emotional map. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this in a presentation, and
Really?
I think it's absolutely brilliant, and I will steal it.
Yeah. Yeah, this is something we do a lot for museum experiences. It's really helpful. It's really cool. Go ahead, Michael. Sorry.
Oh, sure. Yeah. To echo what everyone else said, I thought this was just a lovely, really great concept. Super original thinking. I love it's you know, it's an original IP, which we all love, or I guess no IP. Really, really lovely. The why is very clear to me for this. There's one sentence I pulled out as sort of the thesis statement, which I'll read right now. It's by paying careful attention to their needs, taking responsibility for human behavior, and by providing thoughtful care, humans might begin to restore the order of nature and create harmony in the living world. It's very clear to me that's what the whole experience is about, and all of the smaller touch points and things like that support that idea. So that's really, really well done and was very clear to me. I would encourage you to put maybe a little bit more detail into what one of these animal experiences might be like. Again, less from a technology standpoint, more from an interaction standpoint. This is a classic challenge of, you know, it's easy when it's one guest with one of these creatures. How does that work? How does it work when there are 10 guests interacting with one of these creatures? And how does every guest feel agency, that they're actually having a part in, you know, doing the thing, doing the activity? My other note is really more of a question for the designer. Is this a story that needs conflict? There's a section about conflict. Not every interactive experience needs to be a game with a win or loss state. Maybe this could just be a puzzle where you're collecting things and collecting knowledge. That's not a direction. That's just a question that the designer might want to consider. Other than that, I have some concern about the business model, how much this would cost. It seems very expensive to have a quality experience that matches this description, and you know, the attendance would be, how much you would charge, all of those things. I'm less concerned about that at this stage, but it is always something to think about.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I mean, if I have anything else to criticize about the project, and it was hard to find things, quite honestly, but you know, it like the rendering, like you might look at it when you first look at it and you're like, you know, the renderings and the images and the presentation, they're not the best I've ever seen from you know, even from a student project. But somehow they actually convey the story and the sense of wonder and the feel of the spaces and the playfulness of the concept really, really well. And the fact that they all hold together as sort of a set, even, you know, even if where AI was used or however they were created, it helps me understand the intent in a really clear way. So I think that works. But then I agree with Michael. I think this is the beginning of a really great idea, but it will take a ton of work from this point forward, right, to really develop it into something. There's like so much in the concept that relies on the richness of the spaces and the amount of technology integration that would just take an army of designers sort of a long time to develop into a real experience. But there's so much to work with here. I think it could be something like really fantastic.
All right, 15 seconds.
Yes.
Good job, Dave. You got it in. All right. So thank you, panelists. We're now going to move on to Mad Science Fair. Are there any students here from the Mad Science Fair? All right. We are going to go ahead and get started. Panelists, you have 9 minutes.
Okay, I'm going to start the ball rolling here on this one also. 2 minutes and 30 seconds into the video, I still didn't know what the goal was. And that in some cases, I would have stopped. Unfortunately, this is one of those projects that is very, very specific IP. It's very specific to a certain audience. I think that the idea behind it is interesting. And if, again, you are fan base, you'd want to be a part of this and you'd want to be immersed in the environment of it. Unfortunately, what we're looking at right now are some illustrations that don't lend itself to the quality of the presentation. I think that there's a lot of good ideas here, but I'm not understanding why I'm looking at this and what I'm trying to get from it. Technically, there's a lot of work here too. A little bit like if you haven't played it, if you don't know what this world is, you're going to be lost. And the amount of time that you have for an attraction to move forward, to get you into the queue, to get you into the pre-show, to get you into the attraction, to get you moving and get you out, there's not a lot of there's a lot to pack in here.
Yeah.
Again, going farther than that in terms of budgetary, a lot of constraints. So
Yeah,
still needs to be worked out.
yeah. I mean, look, I think the concept is great. I love the notion of combining a Renaissance fair with a children's museum. I think that's really interesting. I love that they found a way to present horror and sci-fi that's not scary, but is, delightfully spooky. I think that's something really fun, and the opportunities that haunt experiences or true sci-fi themes just don't really explore. And I think some thought has gone into the placemaking. Some really nice thought has gone into the placemaking about how to combine all these things. The biggest concern I have is that I don't really know what the guest experience is. I'm just not sure what the guest actually does from the moment they decide to visit through the entry experience, how their day unfolds. There's a lot of solid thoughts about the types and mix of attractions, but very few details about what actually happens inside of those attractions from a guest perspective. And I just love to see the next iteration of this project where all of that thinking kind of manifests into an actual design of the spaces and the attractions. Because I just feel like that's where the concept falls short. It just feels like the team got caught up in the details of the backstory and the characters and all that kind of placemaking before either running out of time or just getting into the design of the rest of the project. Some of that may just be sort of lack of experience or sort of misalignment of priorities, but I think you have to know what the guest journey is from the time you go to the website to buy a ticket to the time you leave the door, and even after you go home or go online to look up the photos that you took and all that stuff. So I think that's the key piece that's missing for me.
Yeah, I will piggyback on that. I really agree with what Dave said about being a little confused at the guest experience, what the guest experience actually is. And, as I said about the Viking Voyage project, it's so interesting to see different students with different backgrounds and areas of specialization and excellence, how they approach this assignment differently. Pure speculation here, but this seems to me as a project that comes from somebody with more of a writer or creative director background, as opposed to somebody who's thinking more naturally in terms of environmental design and spatial or dimensional design, thinking about physical spaces. And that's okay. But when you're presenting the concept, I was also confused for a while about what it actually is. And when I started to watch the video, I agree. I love the idea of a Renaissance fair meets a children's museum. I thought the writing was great. It was funny. Humor is very tricky and hard to do. Necropolis Pizza in loving memory of your hunger. That was great writing. But when I started to watch the video, it felt like the opening cinematic of a video game, where there was exposition and I was sort of being told, you know, of the backstory of this place and the characters. And I would encourage you to take that next step of thinking, how is this information conveyed to the actual guests? Is there a pre-show? You know, are there kiosks where they find out this information? Is there an app? Taking that next step of thinking a little further, how are the guests actually experiencing this? And then conveying that with imagery and diagrams.
I'd like to jump in. For me, what was interesting is like this is the start of original IP, right? With the characters in the story, and we're going to develop this IP, and then they spend a lot of time doing that, which is really fun work. And then not taking it into perhaps the assignment of building a space experience or an attraction, and that they started to fill in with certain ideas, the idea of the different type of gear interacting differently with different types of interactives. Good start again, but not enough detail to really tell what the guest experience would be. And then they started to fill in with other parts of it that a Renaissance fair would have. So I think this is almost early blue sky idea, and then it didn't get into the why of all of it after the fact. I could see this as an animated short, actually, that then gets presented and say, hey, we want to do put this on a network similar to other animated series and tell the stories of these doctors. But that was my take on it. It's the start of IP, but it didn't go further into experience, attraction, any of those things.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And I just have one suggestion before we wrap up. For the team, especially if they find themselves kind of struggling with how to think about placemaking, I think I'd encourage the team to investigate the use of 3D modeling in the design work and the presentation work. There's some simple and powerful modeling programs, and you can very quickly help you visualize your idea without getting caught up in designing every detail. And it will instantly enhance your presentation materials beyond just sort of rough sketches and collages. So just a suggestion.
I'd like to jump in one more time. Just say in general, it's really hard to know exactly how to pitch something and how to engage. Sometimes we all have a hit, sometimes we all have a miss. I think in this particular case, it was putting in as much as we can to do as much as we can show. But again, it starts to lose the continuity. And I had struggled a little bit with the flow of what I'm looking at and what I'm understanding and why I'm seeing it. So a little more clarity.
All right. We are at time. Thanks, everybody. Really quick, Carolyn, with Wilderhaven has arrived. I did just receive a note that Carolyn's arrived. Hi, Carolyn. We actually did review the commentary or the project already. It has been recorded, and so you can go back and review that later on. But
great, thank you so much.
Right.
Can't wait to hear what you guys thought of it.
We loved it. That's the summary.
Yeah, we love it.
I would have logged on sooner, but I'm actually at a job site right now, so I was covered in paint. So
Understood.
I appreciate that, and I look forward to hearing your reviews.
All right. All right, thanks, Carolyn. All right, next project, Journey of the Gods. Any students here from Journey of the Gods?
Yes, hello, that'd be me.
Nice.
Oh, great. Wonderful. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start the timer, and panelists, begin when you're ready.
Sure, I'll start again, just because I'll be honest, like, I do not entirely understand how a 16-year-old developed this project with this level of detail. I just don't. It is a sophistication well beyond a 16-year-old. It's incredibly impressive. I don't know what they have in the water at Glenbrook South High School, but it needs to be packaged and sent to every school around the country, because the project is if the project is just a result of your perseverance and your skill and your knowledge, you need to be commended for your work in a big way. I think the level of clarity and the effectiveness of the storytelling is really impressive here. It's just kind of all laid out from start to finish in a way that I think some industry veterans really struggle to know how to do. There's so much to like about this project. It just from start to finish, the level of detail that you thought about it. The only concern I have with the project stems from the sheer sort of size and scale of the experience. It's just incredibly large, and like it's 2 full rides inside of a building. Like, it's just amazingly complicated, and I kept looking for clever solutions that you would come up with to solve this, but I didn't really see any. But in the way it's described and rendered and modeled, it's just a massive attraction. But it's fantastic in its execution of story. It's the way you use Lego modeling to do the ride-throughs. Like, I don't entirely understand how you did this as a 16-year-old. That's all.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll jump in on this and go ditto. That was really amazing. I really enjoyed looking at this, watching your video. Well thought out. I was able to visualize this project very quickly, and that is the key for engaging. If I'm a developer, if I'm a looking for a project, you engaged quickly. It was well articulated. I agree with everything you said. And the idea of using the Legos is great fun, but I got it. The key is I got it. It's just that simple. Yes, it is a massive scale, and yes, not everybody has the deep pockets in order to do this, but you did a splendid job. The only thing I would say is oftentimes you'll run into a niche market, and you have to ask yourself, do I have enough, does this have enough appeal for the masses, or is this more of a selected group of people? But otherwise, very, very impressive.
Thank you.
I'll jump in here and go next. Yeah, this was such a wonderful piece of work, and honestly, it was a joy to review. I think it's the reason why a lot of us got into this industry in the first place, is because we had ideas like this, and the biggest challenge for all of us is before the thing is built, before there are any visuals to point to, how do you clearly convey the idea? And you can only do it with the tools that you have, and you did such a good job of doing it. These Lego ride-throughs are not just adorable, but they're also very clear and really help illustrate the concept itself. The why, the problem that you're trying to solve about groups being forced to split up and wait for each other, it was very clearly articulated. I thought it was all just really fantastic, wonderful work. Just so it's not all gushing praise, I am going to put on my my operator's hat for just a moment, just point out that there will be some challenges to coordinate like the post show for groups that have split up and then need to you know, regroup. So there will probably need to be some kind of dwell space before the end so people can regroup. You should consider what happens if, you know, one of the rides breaks down and the other still has to operate. How does that work in a shared space? Also, if it's not purely just about height restrictions and it's about, you know, maybe some kids are too scared to do one because of all of the intense drops and things like that. An interesting reference point is the ropes course at Shanghai Disneyland, which deals with a similar challenge of having sort of an advanced, more challenging course and an easier beginner's course, but actually gives participants the option at several points throughout the course. If they think it's too scary, they can go down to the easier course, or if they think they want to be more challenged, they can then switch tracks and upgrade to the more advanced course. Something to think about. But overall, yeah, I just wanted to say this is such great work, and I really want to encourage you to keep going on your journey.
Thank you.
I agree with what everybody else is saying too. Really, really sweet. The ride-throughs. Loved watching them. They really were fun, and a lot of work went into that. The thing that I also like your inspiration statement and making it personalized as to what led you to start. That is always a good way to get people connected to your story. And I would encourage you to continue to do that, is to make that human connection when presenting, to do so. Your problem statement about outlining what the problem is great. I think that probably requires many more experts in the world, along with yourself, to solve that. I think it's a common problem in many attractions, is how do you keep a group dynamic, a group together, as well as being separated at certain points. Michael's statement about giving clues to guests about the experience that they will get, whether it's the complication or fear of a ropes course. There are ways to guide guests to making better choices that and meet expectations. Certainly furthering exploration of that and learning about that would be really terrific. I also like the fact that you've got really developed two attractions that are really, really well developed. So nice work all the way around. Make sure you tell your stories, keep telling your stories, find out the clues to let others join your journey.
Yeah, and if we have any time left, I just want to say that you know, the other place that other than the big ideas, and the place that the project really shines is in the development of some of the details, like the design of the Pepper's ghost effect in the dome room. That's really well thought out and expertly explained. The design of the Ra vehicle is gorgeous, like not just in Legos, but it's really convincing as an actual ride vehicle. You know, even in the theming, it's just really expertly expressed. And then I just want to say thank you for providing the acknowledgements at the end of the project for all of the resources that you use to create the project. It's just really helpful to understand sort of your skill level and your experience and the smart use of technology that you executed. So I found that really nice to see at the end of the project.
And I would just like to say that your presentation skills are excellent.
Great.
One of the times oftentimes you run into someone who has brilliant ideas and knows how to execute them, but doesn't have the skills to verbalize them and to sell them. And you're very good at it, and you're very articulate. So well done.
Thank you. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you. We are at time. So we're going to move on to our next presentation, our next project, Heroica. Is there anybody here from Heroica right now?
Yeah.
Oh, Andrew's here. Okay, great. So panelists, you have 9 minutes.
I'll let someone else start. All right, fine. No one else is gonna start, I'll start. It's like I was saying earlier, it's really difficult to compare this project to the other submissions because what is presented is a really great, it's a really great story. You know, and it's rooted in great storytelling and script writing. But there's no actual placemaking, right? There's no actual placemaking of the land. And I find myself having to kind of imagine what these places look like and what the ride queue feels like and how big the spaces are, rather than reading about those details as part of the script writing. I think it would help Andrew to start to investigate more practical aspects of placemaking, you know, sort of laying out an attraction or adjacencies of experiences, and delve into what the guest journey through the attraction actually could be. You clearly have the creative chops to tell a great story, and that it's amazing. There's some great writing in here. I would just love to see you complement those skills with some of the realities of what it's going to take to create these attractions and how a guest could experience them. I mean, maybe that's a little bit unfair because you clearly say at the beginning that you're a show writer, but I believe that even show writers really need to understand and be able to convey their, you know, how their ideas could or would actually be executed within the context of a real world attraction and real world budgets and real world constraints and all the things that come with, you know, designing an actual guest experience.
I'm gonna jump in and talk about the script themed land. I think you do a really good job of describing the land itself through the words. And I think that you'd be an asset to any team who would then develop the art associated with it and the pragmatic solutions that go into it as well. I think a strong team member, really well developed. I do wonder about the emotional attachment that your characters have with the audience or the guests and how they would tie together. The artwork that you put alongside does give a sense of what the script is about, so it does help with a little bit of the storyboard part of it. This is a really good start to sit, I think, to be with a team to then develop it much further with all of the aspects that go into attraction building.
I'm going to jump in here and say pretty much the same thing. It's an interesting start. And as a visual industry and as an experience industry, now we need to see how the author intends for it to be played out. It might have behooved him probably to go ahead and bring some other players into the team in order to get a fully fleshed out project. But story-wise, it's interesting. I'm intrigued, but that's where it stands for me.
I will go next. Hi, Andrew. I wanted to mention I'm somebody who got his start in this industry as a show writer. And I'm somebody who also has had a lifelong love of superheroes and comic books. I think as Heidi said, this is a great start. Clearly, this comes from the mind of a writer, and your wordsmithing ability is apparent. I think you've taken on a really difficult challenge here, content-wise or topic-wise, because the clear promise to the guest for a concept like this is that the guest will learn to become a superhero and become a superhero. And that's a really hard thing to pull off. And all of the attractions are primarily passive attractions. where there's no opportunity for the guests to sort of lean in and actually show that they are a hero via interaction. I could have missed something, but I think the only interaction that, excuse me, sorry, fire trip. I live right next to a firehouse, so that's
The real superheroes.
real super. Yeah, the only interaction that I could find was controlling the height of the dragon spinners. And you know, you really want your content and what the guests actually do to really match up. And this is a really big challenge. You know, if you go to the Harry Potter land, the guests are all trying to become wizards, so they get the wands and they cast spells. If you go to Star Wars land, they made a choice not to have it be a Jedi Academy. So you're just sort of a regular person going to this distant planet. But if you go to the Jedi temple, where you build the lightsaber, that's kind of the closest experience that you get to becoming a Jedi. And then Avengers Campus has its own issues with this exact idea. You know, are we going to hang out with the heroes, or are we going to become a hero? And so I would suggest that you put some more thought into that. And then my last comment is maybe going to be a grenade that I'm going to throw into this. So anyone else, please feel free to disagree with me, but this is the perfect opportunity as a writer with a command of words, the way that you have. You are it is the show writers and the creative writers who know these words that are sort of the best positioned to be prompt engineers to create AI artwork that supports these ideas specifically, particularly at the concept stage. That's something that could really help your presentation. We don't have to get into a conversation about the ethics of that or the jobs lost because of that. I'm purely saying that to help supplement this pitch with some visuals, writers are among the best people positioned to do that. So
no, I agree, and I actually think you could use that to address some of the concerns that I had about the placemaking. I think with some really careful descriptions of the places and the descriptions of the actual guest experience about what you're gonna do and see there, you could come up with some really great AI artwork that was made the things that I was lacking, that I wasn't seeing in the project in terms of the actual placemaking of the guest experience. I think you can make that come alive.
I'd like to jump in just a little. I can see your start of the germinal idea with interactive when you talk about the e-ticket dark ride, the hero's journey. And the thing that got me excited when I got to the slide about it said visitors will, I'm reading now, will have to take a more active role in helping Heroica's Dark Urban Avenger Night Guard. And I go, cool. And then I was like, save the city. And then I didn't know what was going to happen next, other than you gave entrance and queues and places of a consulate and lobby. And I didn't know what I would be experiencing as a guest.
That's exactly
so
what I'm talking about.
You set the place and you set the expectation, but then I wanted more. And even in your words could have said a little bit more. So riders learn. I'm looking at beat 3 that the city is under attack. That's great. So how do they become active in that role? Other than
all right, we are at time.
Something. So sorry, but thanks.
Nope, you're good. No, we are at time. Michael, man, you got into AI there. I thought my laptop was going to catch on fire. But we're good. Michael would go there. Anyways, we are going to be moving on to the next project. Thank you, panelists, for that, and Andrew for submission. Keep in mind that if you want to hear the final award results, tomorrow's review session, which will be at noon Eastern Standard Time, is when those awards will be announced. So come back next time, and I'll remind everybody at the end of our session again today. So the next project that will be reviewed will be Virtual Disneyland. So panelists, you have 9 minutes.
I'll jump in quick to get started. Huge amount of time and effort to do recreation of Disneyland. Unbelievable all the way around. I see this as an extension of the Disney brand into a whole new world. By all accounts, you can see the technology that went into it and the creative problem solving, all of those things. I think the design is nearly complete as to what takes place. My first time doing this go round, I can see the work that goes into it. I have a hard time, other than the efforts that have gone into it to recreate what already exists, how to judge the originality of it based on the technology that you used, which is interesting. But I see this as a variation of other designers' work in a new presentation tool.
Yeah.
And experience, walkthrough experience, all those things.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. The scope and breadth of this project is staggering. I don't, it's an amazing technical achievement. It is really something special. I'm not sure I've seen a student project that is this extensive in its scope. It's akin to coordinating and building two real theme parks with an army of subcontractors. And so I think for me, a lot of the value of this project comes from the notions of project management and project coordination and project communication that had to take place to make this all work together. And I think, the students who put this together will find that to be the most valuable aspects of what they achieved. And it's amazing. But you're right, Michael, that there's no real design work here. There's no additional storytelling. There's no kind of originality, which made it very, very difficult to evaluate against all the other projects. And I think that if you had designed a new land in addition to building all these other, that would have been something that really could have been evaluated on kind of an originality and storytelling aspect. But technically, it's astonishing.
I'll just jump in here. I agree with what's been said. I just clicked on the link in the spreadsheet again, and it looks like this has actually changed the submission from the Disneyland replica to an original concept called Minecraft Overworld, which repurposes a discarded mine into a theme park destination. Unless I'm looking at the wrong...
I think you have the wrong link.
Oh, yes, that's a different Minecraft project.
It's a different Minecraft. Yeah, different.
All right, my mistake. So then, yes, I will just very quickly echo what's been said. This is just a tremendous amount of work. I'm somebody who worked at Disneyland for years and walked those footsteps every single day, and the scale and detail is astonishing. My only comment would be it's time to take the next step and get serious about using Unity or Unreal, because those are the professional tools that people are using to do this, not for fun, but to do it professionally, to simulate and create virtual environments without the constraints of the Minecraft game. So take that dedication and clear work ethic and take the next step into some of these professional game engine tools. It's really, really impressive quantity of work. So well done.
I'm going to jump in here now and just say yes to everything everybody has said. It is astonishing. I think, Dave, you really hit it on the nail when you talk about coordination, project management, bringing teams together. That in itself is a whole skill, which this clearly testifies to that ability to bring the team together. And I love that. It's a recreation. It's not an attraction. It's certainly an experience if you're in Minecraft. And I have several friends that I've talked to about this and said, you're not going to believe this. And this is extraordinary. But it is not a themed experience. But for that and what it took to do it and moving forward into presentation alone, outstanding.
Can I actually add one other thing? Thank you, Heidi. Just as a thought experiment, I've spent a lot of time thinking about the relationship between the physical world and the digital world. I think one of the reasons why, we had this whole hype cycle about the metaverse, and it really fizzled. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that is that people just sort of took these physical environments, built a copy in the digital world, and then, the guest experience on a screen is just inferior to the one in the real world, if the rules are all the same. So I would really encourage the person or people behind this project to put some thinking into what are the things you can do in the virtual world that you cannot do in the physical world, where you're not limited by having to get 1,000 people through an experience every hour. If you remove the throughput constraint, in the virtual world, a guest can fly, or they can shoot projectiles out of, energy beams out of their hand, right? So how do you take this? I'd be really interested to see how can you overlay some gameplay or some mechanics or some new experiences on top of this one-to-one recreation that you've made, which is really impressive, so that we could get like a new look or a new type of experience that's emergent, that can only happen in the digital twin.
Jump in real quick too. Certainly not commercially viable based on the IP associated with it, just to make that elephant in the room statement, unless Disney was contracting you to do this work, which then it could be potentially. It's beautiful, beautiful recreation, iterative artwork and experience. I want to reinforce that. Really terrific.
Agreed.
Any final comments?
Now, is Nicholas here? I don't think he is.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Actually, if I could jump in real quick, Frank just said that he's actually at work at Frankendesign.
Oh, nice.
Great.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cool.
so, okay, with 30 seconds to save, thank you very much, panelists. We're going to be moving on to the project Hidden Gems. I don't believe there's anybody here from Hidden Gems, but
Yeah.
just to double check.
No, I don't think Maggie's here.
Okay. All right, so we're going to go ahead and move on. I will start the timer. Panelists, you have 9 minutes.
Yeah, before anybody starts, full disclosure, Maggie actually worked at PGAV Destinations last summer as an intern, so I know her. I did not work personally with her on projects, but I tried as hard as I possibly could to not let that influence my evaluation. In fact, I didn't even see that Maggie was the author of this until after I read the project. All that said, this is another project that I love. I love it. I think it is one of the most complete, comprehensive, thoughtfully executed student projects that I've seen in a long time. There's so much careful thought and smart thinking that went into the development of the project. It's really impressive. All the aspects of the guest experience are thought about, the placemaking, the ride, including the vehicle design, the graphics, the technology, all that stuff has been considered, and it's been developed to a point that you could take this to a design firm and start work on the next level of design development. It's that well thought out. You know, I love the originality and the storytelling. I love it without relying on fantasy or sci-fi or some kind of totally imagined world. It's not just original, but it's grounded in the real world. And yeah, there's an element of kind of magic overlay in the gem piece of it. But the rest of the characters and the places we visit and the ride vehicles and the setting for the attraction, and they're all places that we know and that we're familiar with. And it's just really easy to imagine creating this world without a lot of wild special effects or reliance on kind of over-the-top media. And it's really hard to do in an original story. I love it. I love the way that the characters are developed. And I'm impressed with the whole package of the design, right? The renderings, the photo montage, maybe a little bit of AI, the 3D modeling, the graphic development, the documentation that you've put together. It's just that there's a level of sophistication here from a designer that you just don't always see with student projects, or even students coming out of school. And it's clear that the amount of time that was spent working at professional firms as well as the time in school has paid off and taught Maggie some really valuable narrative and technical and visual communication skills. It's really an impressive package, the whole thing.
I would like, I'd love to jump in on that too, right after you, because it's a rinse and repeat for me. Exactly what you said. I agree 100%. And something that we haven't necessarily talked about is the repeatability. I would go back to this over and over again, and I would do collections. I would bring people with me. So this is something that I could see this being a part of my social experience repeatedly. And everything that you've said, an extraordinary amount of work has gone into this. This is clear. It's concise. I can understand it. I know what I'm seeing. I know what I'm about to experience. I really don't have a lot more to say other than this is such a little small critical thing. But in watching the video, I would like to see more of the project and less of Maggie in the screen. Let your project speak for yourself. And I know that might seem like, okay, Heidi, but I really want, when you have a short-term opportunity to pitch something, I want to keep my eye on the project and not on you. And that is just a minor detail.
I think that this is of the packages that we've seen is the most comprehensive of all of them. Excellent research. Obvious working at PJV and other places and has showed the rigor and the thoughtfulness and the planning that goes into decision making and the way that it's presented in a very clear manner. So every time I turn to a page, I'd look at it and I go, well, what about this? And I felt like I got an answer, at least enough to carry it further to go on to give to a design firm or to a project team and move forward with it. It's sure there might be changes, sure there might be some little details here and there, but it's very well thought through. The emotional experience for me could have been a little bit more amped up, just a little bit. But I think this is an excellent example. Pick a different story, theme, whatever. Use this as your outline package, pull away the details, then throw them in again and start over. This is a good example of a really strong package.
I don't have really much to add. I agree with everything. This was, I think, out of the ones we reviewed, this was the most balanced. Just great. You can see the amount of thought and detail that went into this. It feels like a really cohesive concept. The way that it's presented is very clear. if I had any note, it would be that I do have a couple of concerns about the interaction mechanic of collecting the gems.
Yeah.
How is that actually going to work? How are the guests on the ride? Will they sufficiently get feedback that they've collected? You know, is it going to be multi-sensory? Is it audio? Or are things going to light up? That's all sort of next phase of design. And you know that I could easily see this being mocked up in VR and having guests play test it to see if they're sort of getting it, what the gameplay is, and if it's clearly explained to them and things like that. But that's really not a knock at this, you know, at this package. It's just sort of a clear next step for me. So well done, great job.
Yeah, and the only sort of negative comment I have to add on top of that is I wasn't entirely convinced in how the guest is going to get the story and know what those mechanics are. Like it's sort of bypass. Maggie sort of says, oh, we'll give it to them the queue experience. And every other part of the guest experience is so well thought out. I felt like that's sort of an afterthought. And it's such an important part of the guest experience to understand what am I actually going to do and why, like, how is it going to, you know, what's my place in the story and how am I technically going to execute it? You know, it's, you know, Mario Kart, you know, at Universal spends a lot of time trying to teach the guests how to use that ride in the queue line. And I think people still don't get it. And it's still difficult to understand. And so I think that's the one place where I felt like Maggie sort of breezed over it and didn't give us enough to say, this is how the guest is going to get what they're supposed to do on the ride and why they're doing it.
I'm going to jump in again and agree with you, Dave. I wasn't going to mention Mario Kart, but since you did, it was utterly confusing to me. And again, I might not be the market they're looking for. I didn't have enough time to understand the game. And I've actually played the game with a couple of the young boys in my neighborhood that taught me. By the time I got into the ride vehicle, I just took the headset off and looked at the scenic elements and went with that. So it's critical that you find a way to give every guest and those that are not familiar with anything as much information. So I agree, the queue line is a very important area in the pre-show.
All right, we are at time. Thank you, panelists. We have one more project to finish for today. And just as a reminder, the awards are tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time. Come back and join us for those as a part of that final review. The last project for today is Mint Folia. Do we have anybody here from Mint Folia?
I'm Mint and I created this project. Yeah.
Nice.
That's here.
Nice to meet you.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Panelists, you have 9 minutes.
Hi, Mint. Glad you're here to listen in. This is good. I think this reminded me of years ago, many years ago, when I went to Epcot at Disney and they had the land attraction, and where there was an attempt to tie in the idea of produce and exploration and give people, guests, an understanding of what's required to do to keep the land, to keep food sustainable, all of those things. And so I like this. This is a new way of looking at it. The challenge that I run in with this and with many things is how do you get a guest engaged emotionally to want to experience this? And it's really, really difficult unless you truly believe in a way of living or a way of behaving. It's a challenge. This is a huge challenge. Having said that, I think this is to steer away from potentially theme park attraction. I think this goes towards a brand experience for a corporation who then fosters this kind of work. And I think could be a strong brand overlay to talk about what a company does and what they do and how it makes people's lives better, what are the things that we can do, all of those things. And so for me, this seemed really interesting as an extension towards a brand experience rather than a theme park attraction.
Yeah, I agree with that, Michael. I mean, I like the idea of the project a lot. I'm impressed with, some of the technological solutions and to achieve the guest experience. And I think the concept's really, really original. It's just a bit narrow in its audience appeal, right? And you'd have to do a lot of marketing to make a theme park or even a single attraction about plant growth sound appealing to the majority of the general public. And maybe if it was part of a science center, or like you suggested, part of a branded experience, it becomes a perfect fit. And then you don't have to work so hard to get people excited about it, because those are the people who are going to those experiences. This is I think is an excellent blue sky concept, but it does, again, as most blue sky concepts, there's a considerable amount of development and design before it would be sort of considered industry ready. But I'm going to apologize in advance to all the other mechanical engineering students that are out there listening or watching the video. And it's going to sound like a bit of a generalization, but there's some really nice creative thinking in this project for a mechanical engineering student that you don't often find with mechanical engineers who understand the guest experience in a really compelling way and can express their creative thinking as clearly as this project does. I just think it's worth noting, and maybe unfairly to other mechanical engineering students, but there are some technical issues and there are some gameplay issues that Michael Libby can speak to better than I can. I don't know if the payoff is really that great at the end of the game. Like I wish it was bigger in some way. I have issues of throughput, like just doesn't feel like you can get enough people through this attraction. It just doesn't feel big enough, or like there's enough for a larger group to do besides the 6 or 7 people who are actually playing it. So there's all kinds of technical challenges and issues like that. But conceptually, I think it's a really smart idea and a really nice execution at the very early stages of the project.
I agree with what everyone is saying, and I think that attaching this to some kind of company would be a great idea as a part of their exhibit space to support the effort that they do in terms of natural products. That awareness very much speaks to me about how to do that. I was a little concerned that this would be an extremely expensive project, and so you would need a sponsorship of someone who wants to have you extend their brand in that way. And the other thing is that I kind of got a little Monsanto in me going, oh, I'm not too sure we want to talk about manufactured foods, but I think if it's done properly and you and approach a company that thinks strongly about natural foods, it would be a really great idea. Overall, again, very interesting coming from an engineering student, and I applaud you for that.
I will go next. Yes, I like Michael, this triggered some Epcot feelings inside of me. I could see this totally being like a post show for the Living with the Land boat ride. It would be really fun. Wanted to give you also some props for actually going into the technology a little bit and the NFC chips and how it would actually work. I've seen a lot of concept presentations where people just sort of hand wave over the actual technology being used and how it's actually going to work and say, oh, we'll figure that out later. But you've really put some thought into that, which I thought was great. I also wanted to give you some props for using resource collection as a game mechanic. So many attractions that we see, it's exhausting to me. They're almost always shooting at targets and accumulating points. And there's so many other mechanics out there in games that should be finding their way into attractions. And one of them is resource collection. So I really want to commend you for exploring that, looking at that. I think Michael's comment at the very beginning is right on the money, that there needs to be more of a call to action for the guest. How does the guest immediately get engaged? Here's the stakes. Here's what I need to do. How to get the guest emotionally involved. And yeah, this would work great as a brand experience, or even this is something that I rarely say, but I think this is a concept that might actually benefit from using an existing IP, or a way to sort of get people interested by way of some familiar characters and that sort of thing. Great work.
Any final commentary? All right, with 2 minutes left to spare, thank you again, panelists, for your time with us today. We really, really do appreciate it, and we're really, really thankful for your willingness to review these projects. To Michael, Dave, Heidi, and to Michael as well. And thanks to Nate Naverson for hosting this, as well as to Jamie and Jesse, who also helped put this showcase together. So just as a reminder, tomorrow is the final review session. There will be a group of projects that will be reviewed with panelists, and then the awards will be presented afterwards. So hopefully you can come back and join tomorrow at noon Eastern Standard Time. Dave, did you have a final thought?
Yeah, I do. 9 minutes is an extremely short amount of time to talk about these projects. And the thing that I would love to know is if these authors have questions that we didn't answer. And I would please encourage them to reach out to, at least to me. I can't speak for the other panelists, but I hope they would be okay. Please reach out to us. I'm happy to set up a time, half hour sometime, and have a conversation with you about it. I'd love to do that, because I think the most valuable feedback is when we answer your specific questions rather than just telling you what we thought about it. So please feel free to reach out to me specifically, and I'd be happy to answer specific questions.
And I agree with you, and I'd be delighted to be a part of that too. Please take advantage of us.
I agree. I think we're a resource, so use us as a resource.
Agreed.
Yeah, thanks to each of you. And if there's anything I can say about this industry, it's how helpful the industry professionals are to our students. And so we cannot thank you enough. So, well, with that said, thank you all, and we hope you all have a great day. Stay warm or cold, depending on where you're located.
Cold, please.
Yeah, cold, definitely cold.
Thank you, everybody. It was fun.
You're on a tight ship. You're on a tight ship. Good. Thanks for hosting. All right. Thanks,
No
everyone.
problem.
Bye.
All right. Bye.